International Development Specialist and Senior Policy and Research Lead at Next Year Security, Peace and Development, Dr. Ndubisi Nwokolo. Dr. Nwokolo has considerable experience as a researcher, practitioner, lecturer, and trainer on conflict, peace building, development, and security. He also has a detailed understanding of approaches to post-conflict reconstruction and local governance. He joins us now from our studio in Abuja. Dr. Nwokolo, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to walk us backwards, walk us from backwards, beginning with the delegation that made that visit to Bamako on Thursday. The delegation of West African leaders with President Buhari attending. This is the ideal group to make that trip to Mali to intervene in the crisis. And the stability of their countries is at stake here, as we understand. But what sorts of discussions do you think that they should be having with the Malian government as they continue to meet this week to ensure that, a stability is possible in Mali?
Unfortunately, I think the Sahel region, of which Nigeria is part of it, is experiencing a situation that is not really very encouraging, as in when it comes to issue of conflict. The Malian situation, for now, seems to be drawing a lot of attention, especially to the ECOWAS leaders and the ECOWAS country. Already, Mali is experiencing Islamic terror attacks in the northern part of the region. To add a political conflict to it will be a situation that West Africa might not be able to deal with. Remember, Mali has about 20 million, the population is about 20 million. And again, it's bordered by Burkina Faso and Niger, and the neighboring, the neighborhood effect of the conflict in Mali is likely to destabilize Niger, or is already destabilizing Niger and Burkina Faso. So for the West African leaders who made the trip, yes, one may say, how stable are their countries? Apart from Ghana, which seems to be a bit stable, but not in its own northern region, which equally is experiencing a kind of conflict. But if one is trying to be realistic and try to analyze the entire conflict from a holistic point, Nigeria, being a northern state, has done the right thing by trying to galvanize the other African countries, Senegal, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Niger, Ghana, to see what they can do, to see if they are able to ask the leaders of the June 5 movement to take what the group led by President Jonathan did last week, which was to offer them a national government arrangement, as well as trying to reconstitute the constitutional court, which they've refused. So I think for the West African leaders, intervening, trying to do having a peace deal that could lead to solving at least the political crisis now is a right step in the right direction.
And many wonder, with President Buhari among the delegation, how strategic Mali is to Nigeria.
Yeah, one thing is very critical for Nigeria as a country. Consider what we're experiencing in the northwestern part of the country, and as well as what we're experiencing in the northeastern part of the country. We have banditry, kidnapping, and all forms of violence going on in the northwestern part. Now we have terrorism going on in the northeastern part. We have Mali, where you have the Trogans, who are regarded as armed bazaar, controlling the northern part of the region. And if the crisis in Mali escalates to a situation where people start moving out of the country, and consider the ECOWAS protocol, it means they could start finding refuge in other African countries. It could escalate into other form of crisis, which now we are trying to manage. For Nigeria as a country, we are trying to control the small arms weapon coming into the country. So a situation where you have such a political crisis, and in addition to the terror crisis going on in the north, and these arms keep finding their route into Nigeria, it might be a very difficult situation for us.
Well, I do remember reporting on the rise of the Tuareg rebels in northern Mali back in 2011 when, this insecurity began. And I remember the intervention of the French forces first, into the crisis. And it appears that, these Western or international forces are ready to jump into insecurity situations in Africa, and it's much easier and probably much faster than the regional or continental bodies here in Africa. Why is it so much easier for them to come in? And what stake does France have in Mali? Because they still have troops nearby, and even the U.S. troops are also concerned. The AFRICOM, the African Command, which is in Niger, is equally concerned about what's happening in Mali.
Now, two things are very critical here. For France, Mali was one of their colonies, so they still have that affiliation. They still have that affiliation, and for them, they think, for France, they think they have this part to play in the stabilization of most francophone African countries. Now, if you try to look at the political economy of most of this conflict, you find out that Africa has a situation where even where we have the African standby force, we've not been able to trigger it in such a way that as a standby force, they are able to intervene as early as possible and as effective, as efficient as they could be. If you look at the ECOWAS standby force, which should be, the intervention force for West Africa, they seem to be doing a bit more. But the situation is that West Africa, for instance, now, apart from other issues, the issues of where leaders and the division between the West African countries, the Francophone and the Anglophone countries, the fund is not really there. Nigeria is paying almost 60 to 70% of the ECOWAS, shouldering 60 to 70% of ECOWAS bills. Nigeria is not really doing very well in terms of the oil and so on. So this involves such intervention involves a lot of money. So you find out that the Western countries, they have the money, and they've sometimes set aside funds for such intervention. So it's easier for them to muster that synergy even amongst them or even individually, and intervene as fast as possible.
So maybe the strategy really isn't right, because since 2011, Mali has been in, first of all, insecurity crisis, and now in a political crisis. There really doesn't seem to have been a strategy that works. At least 1,000 U.S. troops still stationed in West Africa, but the problem exists. The UN has said that these international interventions have been part of the problem in Mali.
The problem in Mali is not really a problem of issue of democracy, democratization, and trying to build a lasting democracy. It's not really how it started. It has to do with more of issue of exclusion, issue of environmental issues, and a kind of what I will refer to as some part of the country, especially the tourists who are in the northern part, feeling excluded from day-to-day activities in Mali. That led to even why you have the insurgencies in the northern part that even led to the Islamic terrorism that that started in the country in 2011, then escalating to the conflict and then the coup in 2012. So each time you have such interventions trying to come on, everybody coming with a mindset of, oh, we are going there to build peace. Then the issue could be, what is peace building? You can't have peace. You can't have a sustainable peace without trying to solve the situation, look at the situation from the point of view of or what the really issues are. The people revolting against the current government are talking about corruption, they're talking about exclusion, they're talking about bad governance, they're talking about issues of insecurity. The government is unable to deal with the insecurity in Mali because they are not able to even solve the problem of exclusion, which the Islamic terror group was what gave the Islamic terror group the leverage at the first instance. So that's where you will start to solve the problem. So for the intervention, for any intervention that will come to Mali, those issues need to be solved first before we can, have a headway of how to solve the situation.
This really, calls to question how effective the ECOWAS is, and probably also the African Union, because issues of corruption, insecurity, and residence seem to be peculiar now to West African countries, and there doesn't seem to be anyone calling out anyone. There's no accountability either to the respective governments, and it appears the leaders really do not talk to each other about good governance.
Yeah, I think is a very big issue. Even with Africa looking at the African Union talking about the 2063 agenda 2063, where we are thinking that by 2063 we'll be able to mainstream a lot of governance indices and be able to solve a lot of issues first in us. Even with our formation of African peace and security architecture, you find out that we are not really doing enough. Are we doing enough? You can even come down home and look at what is happening. Are we doing enough in terms of security? Are we doing enough in terms of governance? So, most of these things are internal contradictions in most of these countries. If we look at our country, for instance, in as much as corruption, prebendalism, patrimonialism, and all these things continue to affect issues in the country, in as much as we continue to exclude larger parts of our population from dividend of good governance, people will continue to revolt against the government of the day and trying to find easy way to air out, their frustration, and which might lead to taking arms against the state. So that is what you are seeing in Mali. People are taking arms against the state because the states are not functioning.
So what possible solution could work for Mali?
Well, for Mali, not one solution, not just one solution. There's a lot of things that should be done. First, they should be looking at sustainable how to build a sustainable peace in order to stabilize the country. One part of it is try to, yeah, I'm someone who doesn't say you should negotiate with terrorists, but you should know what are they looking for. Then secondly, how do you deal with issues of environmental issues going on there? How do you try to revive the economies in those areas in order to make the people feel that they are part of the country? That is the second one. The third one could be the issue of governance. How do you make governance speak for everybody? How do you make voices heard? So as you continue to look at those things, and this is where I think the international community should equally come in. It's not about coming in when the conflict is already there. It's about trying to help this country to solve most of the problems, at the time when it has not escalated and turned into conflict, violent conflict that arms are used everywhere. So at this level, Mali needs a lot of intervention that has to do with trying to grow the economy and all that, so that it could help people who have been excluded from the scheme of things in the country. So I think that is the first start. Then with that, we can talk about how do we get the June the June 5th movement to want to listen to the members of the African members of the ECOWAS heads of state.
Dr. Mokolo, thank you again for speaking with us
Exactly.
on Diplomatic Channel.